Yeah, good evening, all. We will start our spaces. So, welcome, SFG. Mean after a long time. Thanks for your time and joining us in this spaces for this discussion on this conversion tactics. I mean, for all the people here, there is Esther Dhanaraj. She is not a new one for us to know. We have all heard her views, her videos, all the stuff. So she needs no introduction as such. Let me directly come to setting the context for this space. No, we are in a times where a lot of issues surrounding this dangerous factors to our Hindu ecosystems. One of the things, as we all know, is the conversion mafia, if you can rightly call the forced conversion, which is happening around, and especially in India. As these are all proselytizing religions, Abrahamic in nature, and they have the right to convert. So as per their tenets, as per their sacred books and all the stuff. So if they don't follow their God, one religion will call us kafir, another religion will call us sinners, and their fates allow them to convert us. So that being the case, we have our Sanatana Dharma, where it's a universal kind of living. I just want to quote this verse, which is very famous. You would have heard. Akasha patitam toyam yada gagachati sakaram sarvadhava namaskara keshavam pradigachati. So it says that when a rain falls from the sky and it reaches the ocean, so all our prayers and all, it's towards one ultimate Lord, the Brahman. So when our Sanatana Dharma talks about a kind of thing, whatever methods you do, whatever God you pray, how different you pray, doesn't matter. Like the rain, which is from the sky, which is falling on the earth, and finally it reaches the ocean. So whatever the efforts of sadhana, the spiritual pursuits you do, it reaches to one supreme, which is called Brahman. So these are the contrasting views we have. Given that circumstances, we are seeing that these Abrahamic religion, especially Christianity, convert people. There are a lot of missionary funding there. As per the data, they say it's 2.7 million conversions are happening worldwide. The shocking statement from VHP, which we had some 2-3 years back, if we can recollect, around 8 lakh Hindus are converted every year. That was the VHP General Secretary told. So if it's approximately 1/3 of the conversions are from India, and there has been kind of other views to counter, saying that there's example this Pew Research which happened a couple of years ago, which tried to say that no, the conversion is not that much a greater challenge for Indians. As much as people who convert from Hindus to Christianity, there are Garbhapasi also happening. So it's not an alarming issue. It's a kind of a portrayal they try to put it on us. And it was rightfully called out by various authors, with various through blogs and all the stuff, saying that the data itself is totally wrong. So we are in a circumstances like that. There's a big problem. How big is the problem? And these are the questions we like to know from my SRG. And of course, she can also take in the other aspects of it. So why do we need to address this an issue? Is it a real challenge? And what are the tactics or how they do this kind of conversion, the forced conversion? What are the laws, and why can't we'll able to have a law saying that no conversion? Is it successful or will it be successful? And how to tackle it from a common man perspective, while we fight on a different streams, whether through legal, political, or social means. But from a common man perspective, as a Sanatani, as a Hindu, what should I do, and what should I be aware of, and what should I need to do? So a lot of questions and clarification. So by SRG, it's your time. So you're free to put your views and tell all our viewers here for the next 20-30 minutes. However time you want to take, it's all yours. And then if you have any questions or any clarifications, we'll have a kind of a Q&A sessions at the second part of this discussion. Yeah. So over to you. Before that, request all your listeners here to share it maximum to your timeline so that it reaches a lot of larger audience for us to participate. And anyone who want to request for a speaker, please do so. I'll be able to approve it. And who are all in speakers, you want to have questions, please raise your hand so that we know that somebody wants to ask a question. Yeah, yes, Adi. Thanks once again. The space is yours.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all those people who have tuned in. Thanks for joining the talk. So, we've been listening to all the research that is been coming from the West and how they are trying to actually trivialize this whole issue of conversion, which I call the, predatory conversions. These are actually predatory. That's the right word, because these people are not actually converting for the sake of the religion or the divinity or for the sake of truth or salvation. These are just soul predators, which is why the word predatory conversions. So the West is desperately trying to trivialize this issue, undermine the whole aspect of how conversions are carried on in India and at what aggressive level they're carried on. If you look at the statistics, back in 1951, the research, the survey stood at 2.5%. Even in 2011, they're still showing, they showed it as 2.5%. I think 2.3 is the right. So, in all these years, in almost 60 years, they're trying to tell us that Christianity stands at 2.3%. Even if we are to take the percentage in 1951 as 2.3%, after 60 years, Christianity has not increased. Is that what we are supposed to believe? And if it hasn't increased, why are there so many churches in the last 60 years compared to 1951? Why in 2011 or in 2021 today, there are so many churches if the percentage is just at where it was 60 years ago, 70 years ago? So this is a very important question. We have to keep talking about it in social media. Let us take their percentage. Let us say it's still 2.3%. Even from 2011 to 2021, 22, it is still 2.3%. That's where they want to maintain it. So what are they building these churches for? Every 5 kilometers, if you go into rural areas, every 5 kilometers there's a church. So if there are no enough Christians, why are they building the churches? Is it to declare dominion? Yes, that's their agenda. But this is a question we have to point out, turn around and ask them. So either you're really converting and your numbers are false, you're deliberately hiding them, or if your numbers are really true, that means you're building churches just to declare dominion in this country. So you're just spreading your footprint. So this question is very, very important that we need to ask them, either to come out with their real agenda of building the churches or come out with the real number. So I would like to talk a little about the tactics. But before I go to the tactics that they're employing, we need to look into the history of Christianity. See, everything that Christianity does, it has two precedents, historical and biblical. Nothing that Christianity does, in no aspect of Christianity, practice of Christianity that you see today in our country is without a precedent. And two kinds of precedents, that is the historical and theological, which is biblical. When we talk of Christianity, the words that come to mind, remember these words: syncretistic, adaptive, customizable, multi-level marketing. So these are the words that come to mind. But the most important aspect of Christianity is the psychosomatic effect it tries to have on the human mind. It works at the psychological level of a human being. And trust me, Christianity has mastered the art of getting into the human head. It can make a vulnerable person see things and hear voices. And it can make that person into what that person would not even have dreamt of becoming. So, for example, let's take, I'll take the example of my own clan. Okay, my family and people like my family. Imagine there's a Brahmin family, very conservative, very even for I mean, let's not even get into that Brahmin thing. A very conservative family, doing Sandhya Vandanam, and the lady of the house is engaged in doing vratams every second day, third day. So one day Santoshi Mata, one day one time she's engaged in doing Vishnu Lalita Sahasranamam, Vishnu Sahasranamam. So For a family like that, it is very easy for the Christian evangelist or this predator to penetrate these traditions of that family. Why? How does that happen? That happens because, like I said, I want to repeat it because I want to stress this point that Christianity has mastered the art of getting into the human head. And it first creates the need. I'll get to the thing, I'll elaborate on that need thing and all that in just a bit, but here I'm using it creates the need in the head of the vulnerable person who is at the lowest, emotionally, mentally, who spiritually also. So when a person is at his or her lowest level, in these three aspects, that is when they strike. That is when the evangelist in the neighborhood or your evangelist who is a colleague or a classmate strikes this person. So this is why I say it knows how to get inside the human head and will make that vulnerable person see things and hear voices. To understand the predatory methodology of these predators, soul predators, we actually have to look into their history, their early history. I'll just be going into a little bit of biblical detail and all that. So just stay with me here. So the Christian movement actually has its center in Jerusalem. It did not start as a religion. It took shape as a cult initially, or a group within the parent body of Judaism. This is not a religion, mind you. And let's call this cult the Messiah cult. Why Messiah cult? Because these people believed in a resurrected being, which is a Messiah. And this small group separated themselves from the rest of the Jewish community living in Jerusalem at that time. So these converts to the cult from the main Jewish community, these converts of the resurrected Messiah comprised of Palestinian Jews. And what was their number? In the very first, weeks or months, it was some 11 to 12 male disciples and maybe just a handful of women. Let's say just 20 people altogether. Now, these were the very first Christians. Although, they wouldn't be called Christians until the next 100 years. So these were the Messiah believers, the Messiah cult. And what class of society they belonged to? They were lower class, uneducated day laborers from a remote corner of the Roman Empire, which a very obscure corner. Nobody knew about it. So these 20 people, they believed that a certain person who was born among them became the God man. He resurrected, he died, he was crucified, he resurrected, and then he ascended into heaven. So these 20 people, instead of keeping that beliefs to themselves, they tried convincing the rest of the Jews in Jerusalem. And they did not stop at that. They did not say he ascended into heaven and we have to worship. What they proclaimed at that point was this Messiah was going to return soon and establish the kingdom of God. And before he returns, you have to also start following him. So you have to prepare yourself, your soul, for his return. So, and it's not like they were cheating anybody or they were lying. These 20 people truly believed this. Whatever they said, whatever they preached, they believed it. Because dying and rising savior gods was nothing new to this part of the world. So there is a definite precedent to that story, to that myth of dying and rising saviors. And if you actually look at, Google it, just say dying and rising savior. So far, they have identified about 16 or 17 such saviors in the mythology of Europe, entire Europe put together, or Mediterranean, call it, Sumerian, all these things put together. They have come up with 16 or 17 such saviors. So dying and rising savior story was nothing new to them. So it wasn't difficult for them to believe that there indeed has been a savior, who took birth and he died for them and he rose again. So these people added to the whole thing his second coming. they truly believed this, and they lived in anticipation of that event, which later came to be called as second coming of Jesus. The church came up with this terminology. So this cult called themselves the poor, or the saints. And also from the early time, they called themselves the ecclesia, or the church. Ecclesia means church in Greek. So they saw themselves as the true assembly of Israel. And they proclaimed to be the end time community. They said when their Lord, that is this Messiah, was going to come back in his second coming, he was going to recognize and reward this community. So they lived in anticipation of his return, of this reward, this recognition, and all that. And at that point, as I said, they did not call themselves as Christians or somebody else. They simply they saw themselves as Jews, but as a renewed Israel. So reformed Israel, revived Israel. So they still continued to go to the same Jewish temple like the rest of the Jews. And they also showed obedience to the Moses law, the Torah. The point that needs to be noted here is they did not call themselves Christian, or they did not see themselves as a separate group from the mainstream Jews. So from being a handful of people, within the next 3 centuries, they grew to some 3 million adherents in just 3 centuries. And they were no more Messiah believers, because now they were called the Christiani, or Christians. And by the end of 4th century, the religion became the official religion of Rome, and they numbered 30 million followers, which would be half of Roman Empire during Constantine's time. So I will not get into the details of how Constantine made it the official religion, or for what reasons. I'll touch upon that thing when I talk about their tactics, their strategy. So today, if you ask any Christian, just catch hold of a Christian friend or a colleague and ask him or her how Christianity spread. And they would say that it spread because it's the truth, and truth triumphs. Truth prevails. We know that's not the case. And we know that for a fact, because history clearly gives us a clear picture by now of why Christianity succeeded. On the one hand was the terror they launched on indigenous cultures. And as nations became more independent, and democracies came about, they dropped their sword, and they started to sing the hymn of love, compassion, and peace. That's actually their strategy. And I would call it a brilliant predatory strategy. So there are 5 aspects to this strategy that have been in use ever since Christianity became an official religion of Rome, and they are used to this day. So I have actually enumerated about 5 aspects of this strategy. The first one is Christianity first creates the need. Like I said when I was talking about how it gets into the head of vulnerable people. So it first creates the need. See, if Christianity had simply addressed the existing needs of people it targeted, it would not have been able to take over much of the world. Because look at the pagan world, look at the ancient world. Pagans were quite happy. They did not think they lacked anything. They were just this happy, celebratory people going about their business with whatever beliefs they had. So, if Christianity had just come onto the scene and claimed that, look, we are going to fulfill your needs, pagans would not have ever gotten attracted to them. To attract the attention of pagans, Christianity had to first create that need. And what is that need? The need was salvation. So it first told the pagans that, look, you may be celebrating your gods and goddesses, but that's not enough, because you need these gods and goddesses are not going to give you salvation. So they first created the need for salvation, which the people did not even know they had. And once they created that salvation and once they injected this need into the minds of the people that they targeted, they claimed to be that truth or that story or that myth, or they claim to have that deity that could meet this need for salvation. So the first point is Christianity first creates the need. Number two is Christianity begins its work at the grassroots. Now, for any movement to succeed, it needs to have numbers on its side. We know that very well in this, even in the present world that we live in. Movements, when it's just one or two or three people, it doesn't take off. It may be in its ideation stage, it doesn't catch momentum, nobody cares about it. So when you're a smaller group, nobody listens to your voice. So for any movement to succeed, we know that we need to have numbers on its side. And Christianity spent the first few decades in gathering the numbers. So how did it gather the numbers? Christianity did not waste any time taking its message of this resurrected Savior, his second coming, establishing the kingdom of God and all that to the elite. It did not go to the educated high-class people in the Roman Empire. And anyway, in the Roman Empire, the educated high class made up only a handful. So where did it take its message? It first took the message to the grassroots, where most of the people usually lived. To this day also, I think most of the people are middle class and under. So Christianity first took its message to the grassroots, which is why even in the Bible, it always talks about how the fishermen, how Jesus's initial very first people were fishermen. And there are so many verses saying that Jesus came for the poor, for the sick, for uneducated laborers. So Christianity definitely took its message to the grassroots, and it waited there till it grew to the size enough to make a political impact. So the first believers, they actually shared their beliefs. Just try to imagine this in your mind. The very first believers, they go share their beliefs to about a miracle working power of a resurrected Messiah, okay, who came and died for these laborers. And these people started sharing this message with their own community. And first they convinced them, because these people are in a very vulnerable state. And Roman Empire was no friend of the poor and the uneducated. So it was all about, elite, high class, educated people. And it favored them only. So these people were already tired of the lives that they were dragging. And here comes a miracle working, powerful, resurrected Messiah who has gone to heaven with the promise of making place for these poor people in heaven. So this community immediately got convinced. Maybe not everybody that this cult members talked to initially, but definitely some were convinced with this initial idea. And at that point, even one additional member was a boon to this cult, because they were growing their numbers. So they first succeeded in convincing a small group, and every time they shared their beliefs, new members started adding to the community, believers community. And the size consistently grew, it steadily grew. So they were not in a rush. They were reaching one person at a time, one group at a time, one village at a time. And they grew from the bottom up, and definitely not top down. And to this day, Christianity maintains that strategy. It uses that strategy. So the proselytizers, as you see, are most active among the disadvantaged communities of our country. It could be, socially disadvantaged, or financially, economically. They could be in the worst of their health, emotional, physical, mental health. So disadvantaged communities and vulnerable people are their target. So they still follow that strategy. So number 3, Christianity eliminates competition. What do I mean by that? So, like I said, it has mastered the art of getting inside the human head. After getting into the human head, not only does it create the need for salvation, it simultaneously starts demonizing the competitors. So, I gave you an example of that Hindu family. Not only does Christianity come up with this need for salvation and says that here is the remedy for that, here is the fulfillment of that need, it is also addressing the need. I mean, salvation is a spiritual need, but then there is a material need in that person, because Christianity's target group is a person in need. So this person who is in need of a material, who also has a material need, Christianity comes and offers a fulfillment of that need. So while doing these two, spiritual and material fulfillment of material need fulfillment, it is also demonizing that person's former practices, or we should say current practices. So Hindu practices are, in this context, Hindu practices are demonized. What is Christianity trying to do by that? Eliminate competition. So it demonizes competitors, competing traditions, competing, practices, beliefs, and all that. So if you look at it in the historical context, even pagan practices were demonized. So they started calling the pagan practices as devil worshippers, demon worshippers, sex rites, and so they wanted to eliminate all these things. So the phrase that critical scholars use is, it is all or nothing for Christianity. Converts have to abandon their former beliefs and practices, and their the religious commitments that they have towards their temples and all that, in order to join the church and become Christians. So that is what is all or nothing. So that's the precondition for of Christianity for joining the religious movement. So for example, let me put this in the perspective. So if there is let's say we're talking about the Greek world, the Greco-Roman world. So if a person who worshipped, say, Athena or Zeus, didn't have to Athena in order to start following, say, Apollo. So an Athena worshipper, if gets attracted to this deity called Apollo, he or she would not have to abandon worshipping Athena. They simply have to pick up Apollo and add Apollo to their deities, rest of the deities in their mandir, in their temple. So simultaneously, he or she could worship, say, Isis or Shiva or, Kali, or who's the other, Hermes. Any number of gods and goddesses they can keep adding to their pantheon and start worshipping all of them together. There was no demand for exclusivity. Sounds very familiar, right? So when Christianity came in, it brought about that exclusivity and convinced the world that this is how religion has to be practiced, not in the way pagans practice it. So it said all or nothing. I mean, we just don't want you if you cannot abandon your gods and goddesses. So after a while, what happened was, pagans, when they joined Christianity, and they realized that, not realized, they were convinced, either by the sword or by peaceful means, later on peaceful means, but initially by the sword, they were forced to abandon their former beliefs. So as generations went by, they completely lost touch with their roots. So Christianity successfully destroys competition. So if you put that in current day context also, that's why the Christianity divides them into first generation converts, second generation converts, third generation converts. So the first generation converts still hang on to their roots. They cannot completely abandon their roots, which is why Christianity brought this syncretism, this aspect of syncretism into it for first generation converts, especially. So that is why you see today, I'm not sure how many of you know about this, but in India, not lot, most all Christians, when they have a wedding at their home, when they're marrying off a son or a daughter, they do all their rituals like Hindus do. There is Sangeet, there is, Mendi, there is turmeric. There is no kumkum, but turmeric is fine for them. They do haldi. And I actually know of a pastor who converted who's actually a Brahmin, converted to Christianity, and then he became a pastor. When he got his daughter married, he did everything in the Brahmin style, minus the bottu. And actually, Brahmins have this, South Indian Brahmins have something called the Gauri Tapasya. So before the bride is brought into the, that mantap, she is made to do a Gauri Puja. And Gauri Puja is done sitting inside a woven basket basically. So bamboo basket. So this pastor had his daughter brought, and this is the bride is brought into the mantap by her uncles, her mamas. This pastor had his daughter come into the mantap in a basket. Just that the basket, instead of basket, had haldi, just like it happens in the Hindu wedding, Brahmin wedding. But the basket had the cross all over it, all around it. So the basket itself is called Gauri Tapasya Gampa in Telugu. Gampa meaning basket. So I didn't even understand what significance it had. Turns out that Christians do not want to make it look as if they are distancing the new converts from their traditions, from their practices. But by the time the next generation comes up, which is the second generation converts, they are slowly taken away from their roots, because all these traditions also are taken away from them. They are robbed of these traditions, these practices. So the longer a person remains a Christian, the farther he or she goes away from their roots. So this is how Christianity successfully destroys competition. And the fourth aspect is it finds the influential member in the family or in the community. So in ancient Rome, it was the male head of the house that actually took decisions of what religion the household should follow. And by converting that influential member, the male member, the Christianity had actually converted the entire family. And having recognized that converting the influential member in the group was very important for its success, within the first 3 centuries itself, it made this the standard business model, standard proselytizing model. So if you look at the tribal cultures, it targets the tribe head. Even to this day, when they are proselytizing in these tribal areas, they target the head of the tribe. So if he or she gets converted, the entire tribe is converted. And in India, this religion is a very domestic thing. So guess who they target? The women folk. So rural areas, especially when I talk to I work in the grassroots areas. So talk to any male member and ask him this question: why did you convert? 9 out of 10 men will say that, the lady of my house, my household, she took me to church and I started following. Then she took my children and I also had to go. This is the story that you'll listen 9 out of 10 times. So it is the women folk that they are targeting. Even when Catholics came to our country, how do you think the nuns became the field workers, and basically these brothers, quote unquote, brothers and fathers stayed in the yeah. So we mostly see these nuns out on the streets, and we barely see these brothers and fathers coming out in the streets. The brothers and the male members are they confine themselves to the convents, and the nuns are always out proselytizing in India, especially. The reason being, them being women get easy access to the kitchens and bedrooms and homes of people here. So that is one of the strategies actually in this country to target the influential member who happens to be women, because religion is a domestic thing in India. The fifth aspect is Christianity exploits human need. We've already gone over this. So it gets into the head of the person it's targeting. And we as humans, we always liked magical solutions to our human problems. So we do not want any logic. We do not want to sit down and resolve our issues. So if there is a magical remedy, we jump to it. So first, Christianity sells itself as that magical solution to these human needs. And secondly, it has now taken control of not just our minds, it has taken control of our most crucial industries. Of course, schools and hospitals, but of late, Christianity has taken control of employment exchanges also. So that human need of, finding a help, or finding an admission to a school, or finding medical care, it has taken care of all these needs and exploited to the maximum. The 5 aspects that I just spoke about, this basically more or less sums up how Christianity actually, but of late, there is a new strategy that has come up. And the reason it has succeeded is, it has mostly succeeded in areas where more people are involved in business. So more than jobs, people where there are more businesses, this model has succeeded. And this is called the marketplace ministry. Now, Christianity is actually declining in the West. And for that reason, they are very desperate to dump it into what they call as third world. And India being, inherently spiritual, we are not a materialistic culture like the communist countries. We are inherently spiritual. So we become their, soft targets. And for which India has become a dump yard for Christianity. So what are they doing? They're pumping more funds, and they're deploying more foreign missionaries. They are erecting more homegrown conversion mills or conversion organizations. They're recruiting more pastors. They are mobilizing more sections of the population, especially in the tribal areas, into separationist groups. We've seen, how over the decades they've made Nagaland. They've turned Nagaland against us, the rest of the country. And they have taken over our businesses. So all these are done with a strategy and in a desperate mode, because right now it's their desperate time, and desperate times call for desperate measures, definitely. So what is marketplace ministry? That has been made popular, I think, in the last, say, 10, 12 years. This is a name given to organization, missionary organization, that is set up by ordinary Christians who are business owners to push salvation, the product called salvation, along with the material products and services that they sell, that the business owner sells. So it's more or less like an extension of the church. It's an extension of the church. It's a church beyond the church. That's how it should be taken. So, and this is basically established to, unsuspecting customer, deceive him and try to trap and convert him. So they follow all these, the aspects that I have told you. If you actually look at how conversions happen, it would fall into one of these aspects. So it maybe they use all together or any of them. So how does MPM work? There is a theology behind it. So there are organizations in the West, they're sitting in the West, and they recruit pastors. They recruit Christians, actually, lay evangelists who are also business owners. And what are they teaching them? They give them, there are, these days they use Zoom sessions, Zoom calls, Skype calls, and there is actually training that happens of these business owners / pastors / evangelists, lay evangelists. So the main thing that they teach is God placed you in business so you can proselytize everybody that comes to your store or your company to buy your product or services. So God is not going to grade you on the basis of your success in business. He is going to reward you based on how many people as a Christian owner, business owner, you convert. And then they say that majority of the customers that come to you are lost and they need Jesus. Basically Hindus. They're talking about Hindus. And why should Hindus be converted in the marketplace? Because Hindus by themselves won't go to a church building, go inside a church. So you take the church to them and meet them where they are, which is when they come to your store. Now, these students, basically, who are the pastors and who are taking this training from these people sitting in the West, they are asked to do two things: commit and exploit. These are the keywords. Commit what? Commit to run your business with an eternal perspective. Commit to make an eternal impact on all your customers and associates. Commit to keep your business life and spiritual life together and never separate. Commit to acknowledge the spiritual life and your business life are one and the same. And then they say exploit. Exploit the relaxed shopping mood when their spiritual guard is let down, compared to a forced church environment. So church environment is very intimidating to a Hindu. For a very first time church goer who is a Hindu, the atmosphere could be little, intimidating. So their guard is definitely up, and they are ready with a counter or unless they go in a very vulnerable state. So it's not very easy to take to come up with a gospel message to a Hindu who has no problems. The relaxed shopping mood when their guard is totally let down, that is when you strike. That's what they're saying. Try to exploit their shopping mood and exploit the proximity and intimacy you as a business owner shares with them, who is your customer. Then exploit the influence you have on them as their service provider or product seller. It's greater than your pastor can have over them. And exploit the trust they have on you compared to the pastor, who they are wary of. So the commit and exploit are the two keywords MPM uses in its training. So again, here they are, if you actually look at it, they are trying to get inside the head of the business owner by saying that, look, God gave you this business not to enjoy its success and not to enjoy its profits. Yes, that's a material reward that he is giving you, but it's with a purpose that he put you in this business. Now utilize that purpose for the kingdom of God and you will be rewarded richly. And what is that purpose? To proselytize everybody that comes to you. And then they say that you have been very lucky, in finding Jesus. and saving yourself from being lost. Now, a majority of your customers are lost and they need Jesus. So it is your responsibility to convert them, to give them that salvation. Even this has a biblical precedent to it. And it dates all the way back to the early days of the church. Paul is the founder of Christianity. Well, there is no evidence to Paul being to say whether Paul was one person or a group of people or an institution. So, but for the sake of this talk, I'll be taking Paul as a person. So Paul, and he had a company of tent making. He had his trade. His business was making tents, and he was actually distressed by idol worship in Athens. He went to the marketplace every day to talk to those business owners, to people who were as a business owner, he would go to Athens and talk to those idol worshippers and reason with them, and stop them from worshipping idols. Imagine Paul to be today in the Indian marketplace. He would be annoyed with the number of Hindus there are in the marketplace, and he would feel very troubled at all the idols or Hindu practices that he would see around him. So what would Paul do? He would not sit still. Exactly like that, back then also, Paul did not sit still. He took his message back to the marketplace where he saw, and he met the people where they were. So he basically shared the gospel in the middle of the marketplace. People mocked him, they sneered him, but he did not give up. He persevered, and we know what is the result of that. So Paul basically told his followers the same thing. Take your message to the marketplace like I did. Don't keep it to yourself, and don't wait for people to come to you. He said, if you think that the marketplace is full of, Satan, worshipping Satan, which is basically what he meant by idol worshipping. So go and remove their idols from them and place Jesus in their hands, but in the marketplace. So this is definitely the I can go on and on to what Paul did and how he did in those marketplaces, how he preached in those marketplaces. But I think you got the point to where I'm getting. So this definitely has a biblical precedent. Marketplace ministry is the latest in thing. And how do we protect ourselves from all these aspects, on all these, their strategies and their tactics? All I can say is read more about them. We definitely have to understand their strategies, which keep changing, decade by decade, or even year by year. Updating ourselves with the kind of strategies that they are coming up with is very important. So this information is not hidden from us. It's out there. It's on the internet. But us as educated people, as tech savvy people, such information is easily accessible. So how do we take it to the grassroots? How do we take it to the people that do not have access to the gadgets that we have access to? I'm actually working on a plan to establish places of places where Hindus can congregate. See, today, in my understanding, the reason Christianity or even Islam is successful is because of the connection that they have with each other. The members of that each of those communities, they congregate. They have platforms to congregate. They have a guide, a leader. Every organization, every church, every mosque has a priest, a mullah, who guides the congregations. We do not have anything like that. We are all on our individual path to, moksha, which is good. Actually, it worked so far. But now I think we have to adapt. Unless we adapt, we will not survive this blow, this onslaught, which has gone, from bad to worse, actually become very, very aggressive. So I'm actually putting together a plan, an idea. Most probably I'll be holding a Zoom session. When I tweeted about this a couple of weeks ago, the response has been overwhelming. And for lack of a better word, or just to make people understand what it is, I would like to use the word Hindu church. So the idea is to come up with Hindu churches all over India and raise Hindu pastors, train Hindu pastors. I mean, those of you who hate those words, let me tell you that I hate those words too. I don't like them. I don't like to use the word Hindu and church in the same sentence. But look at our state that we are in today. We are having to borrow vocabulary from them. So if anybody can come up with better term, I'm willing to adapt that, accept that. But for now, for the sake of this discussion, or until we are up with some physical structures where people can congregate, I would like to go with the word church. Temple is not the word. I don't want to, it's actually desanctifying the whole purpose of temple. Church is a place where people congregate. Temple is a place where people worship. So that's the difference, which is why I'm calling Hindu church. So where Hindus can congregate, ideate, brainstorm what to do, how to do, along with learning our shastras and along with worshipping our deities in bhajans and kirtans. So this is my idea, and I definitely want everybody's help. As a Hindu community, I want people to come forward and join me in this movement. So I'll be presenting my idea sometime over a Zoom call later this month, at the end of this month or early August. I feel this is the only way that we can counter them, because we're doing great. There's no doubt that as a community, we're doing great in our own corner, each in our own corner, small corner. So now is the time to come together as one big movement, for which I feel congregating every week is very important. The second, second reason why I came up with this as the only remedy is youngsters. Our children and our youngsters are going away far from their roots. And contrast this with the youngsters in Christianity. I cannot talk for the other group because I don't know much about how it works. But since I know how youth, that youth groups work in Christianity, I can say it with authority. So if you draw a contrast between the youth in Hinduism and youth in Christianity, Christian youth are the people that drive their churches. The reason churches are so successful is because of the youth groups, the active participation of youth in the church. Now, how does Christianity keep its youth, bound to church? That in itself will become a different, altogether a talk by itself. So there are several strategies Christianity implements to hold the children, the kid group and the youth groups. So in order to take our youth and kids back to our roots and stay connected to the temple, to the deity, we definitely need to learn some lessons from Christianity. I'll put forward two reasons here, but there's more to it. One thing is music, the other thing is food. It is with these two things that Christianity attracts the youngsters. The music is great, there's no denying. Yes, it's all Western music, but that's what the youth wants. I'm not saying we should go all Western. We have some beautiful, the otherworldly kind of music, bhajans. I'm not saying music, Sangeet and bhajans in Hinduism. So we just have to make use of them. We just have to introduce our youth to these bhajans and kirtans. So there are several different things that I would want to incorporate in these Hindu churches, Hindu congregation places that I would like to discuss during my meeting, the Zoom call. So the key here is we adapt or we die. We go to rural areas. We start this congregation centers all across rural India and urban India. I feel this is the only way we can combat. So we don't just fight, we fight to win.
Yeah. Yeah, Sai Geeta, you can ask a question. Yeah, Sai Geeta, please.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Esther ma'am. Very nice to hear you speaking on very important things. And as usual, we had listened to some wonderful information from Kalyanji as well. So this is something, whatever I am going to mention or ask is something related to what Kalyanji mentioned. See, there are weaknesses in every religion. In Hindu religion, they primarily target the caste system. We don't know. Still, it's debatable whether the caste system it came up very lately or is it something that they are using it. But from a Christianity perspective, one important weakness that we see is the sexual exploitation of nuns, children in their institutions. Whether we have spoken about it, because I joined a little late, so I don't know whether we have spoken about it, but this is a great weakness. That's why even when Bishop Franco Mulakal, whoever, he was convicted, the entire ecosystem stood up to safeguard him. He came out, of course, because of the power. That's the weak point. Actually, they are very, very they really don't want to come. These matters should not come out in the public space because they want to project this religion as something very progressive, very good with respect to the Indic religion, our own Sanatana Dharma. So I think how much we are taking it up, because there is a rampant sexual exploitation. I have myself heard during my college days. How much have we taken up, and what are the avenues that as a public we should, because children are affected, nuns are affected, women are affected. How are we going to take this up? This is the weakness, of course. They have to answer. And it is not just in India. All across the world, we have seen how the pastors, the fathers, and their priest community indulge. Thank you.
Sai Geeta ji, actually, there is a whole talk that I have given on 5 internal reasons why Christianity is actually collapsing in the West. They're all internal to Christianity, just like sexual immorality. There are 4 other internal reasons, and this talk I have given on Neeraj Atri's platform. So you can go and watch that. But just for the information of for the benefit of the listeners here, there are actually 5 weaknesses of Christianity, because of which the reasons why it is collapsing in the West, and why it will collapse. Eventually, it will collapse, no doubt, as technology improves and as social media strengthens and becomes a part of our whole being. This is going to collapse. But the reasons are absurd theology. Their theology is very, very weak. If you look at their doctrines, they are very illogical. There is no logic at all to their doctrine. The second weakness they have is their history, their bloody history. They cannot hide from that history. It's all recorded, it's all proven. So there's a lot of blood on their hands. That's another weakness. The third aspect is their shallow spirituality. So no Christian gets that no, they don't get that extreme, that sense of accomplishment, that gratification that comes from our own meditation. Even if you do yoga for 20 minutes, there's so much of enriching energy and all that. You don't get that in Christianity. Even after practicing for 20-25 years, there are people that quit Christianity because it has a lot of shallowness in its spirituality. It's very superficial. The fourth is clergy immorality, what you were talking about. So not just the Catholic Church and not just the Catholic priests. Of late, there have been so many events, so many incidents where Protestant pastors and church leaders, Christian university chancellors, vice chancellors, and all that have shown immorality, sexual debauchery. So not just the Catholic Church, not just the nuns, even regular Christians are very, very debauched and sexually immoral. Of late, those incidents have come out from Australia, from UK, from US. Some of the top Christian Protestant priests have fallen from grace, quote unquote, if you have to quote it in Christian jargon. And the last fifth aspect is evangelical greed. The way these pastors are greedy for believers' money, they have their personal jet planes. They fly private planes. They live on acres of hundreds of acres of land. So their greed is also taking them in. So these five aspects I've actually talked in a very elaborate manner on Neeraj's platform. I'm also coming up with a book, with a very small book, easily readable and graspable book, enumerating these reasons and talking a little bit about how we can use them in our fight against conversions.
Yeah, that was
Thank you, ma'am.
thanks, Esther. I think it's lot of things what you have said is an eye opener to all of us, especially on this the five strategies or the model what these people adopt by first getting to the need of the thing, and then working from a grassroots and all the stuff. And alarming thing is that on the marketplace ministry, the word we have used been coined. So, and especially from the food and other perspective. So that's really alarming.
AKG, thank you for the opportunity.
No, I mean it's our honor and it's our pleasure to have both of you here. Thanks. It's been 3 hours. I understand. So definitely we want to have you in our spaces at least once a month to just kindle this discussion and take it forward. Probably once you will have the Zoom meeting, probably there are some of the issues we can discuss here in this open forum.
Absolutely.
So I like to treat this as a rain check. Anytime you can come. Nageshwara ji also, anytime you are feel free to come and join. Please follow us. All the listeners, please follow the host and co-host. We conduct these kind of awareness discussions, and if you follow us, you'll able to get the notification. With this, I again thank for all the support. This recorded session will be edited and put up in YouTube for others to listen also. I'll also share the this audio file in a tweet separately after this session is over. Thanks everyone. With this, we close the session. Jai Hind.
Yeah, thanks to all the listeners.